Thank you for joining us for this episode of our In Conversation series. The aim of the series is to provide an insight on topical issues relevant to higher education from a university perspective. This is part of our Discover University programme, and we encourage you to follow us on our social media platforms. Teachers and advisors may follow us on our Twitter handle @DiscoverUniEXE, and students, parents and guardians may follow us on our Facebook page on facebook.com/DiscoverUniEXE. My name is Karl and Katherine. I'm the school's relationship manager. I'm joined today by Catherine Lloyd-Clark, who is the Assistant Director with responsibility for student access, recruitment and admissions. Those who have followed us over the last few weeks will know we normally release episodes on a weekly basis. This is a special episode following the changes to A-level results announced by Ofqual yesterday afternoon. Hi, Catherine.
Hi, Karl.
I'm going to start with the obvious question here. What has changed since results were announced last Thursday?
Well, I have to say, Karl, the last 24 hours, I'm sure for many of us and for lots of applicants and families, as well as my own team, have been in an extraordinary period. We are now in a totally different position than we were a week ago. And we are in a position where, very happily, I hope for some applicants and families, we're going to be reviewing admissions decisions already made. But the consequences of that for how things unfold towards the start of term and for our student numbers are really huge. The main difference is that Ofqual and the relevant regulators and government authorities for Wales and Northern Ireland have decided that they will use centre assessment grades or the higher of the two between centre assessment grades and the moderated grade to produce the results for this year's Year 13 cohort. And this means that we have to review decisions that we've already reached and potentially change some of the admissions decisions that we've already made.
Okay. You've spoken there a little bit about centre assessment grades, and some listeners will know that universities will have received the grades that were formulated prior to last Thursday when they came out. These obviously have changed now, and now we've got these centre assessment grades. How do we get these instead?
Okay, so this is quite interesting in some ways. Centre assessment grades are the same thing as the teacher estimates of what people would have achieved in their exams had they sat them. And they were submitted to the examination boards along with a rank order, a class order for students in any given subject cohort. So if you were in a class of physics students for A-level physics with a particular examination board, the teacher would have decided on the likely grade that you would have got had you sat the exam and would have given you a rank order 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, all the way down the cohort. And the original idea was that the two things should be put together with some information about the historic attainment of that assessment centre to produce the actual outcome. Difficulties with that process have meant that the only element of that that's now being used is the teacher estimate. I just want to be really clear, Karl, though, that teacher estimate submitted to the exam boards much earlier in the summer was never necessarily the same thing as the university predicted grade that was submitted with the original UCAS application way back last autumn. Those two things are not necessarily the same. Now, clearly, for some candidates, they may end up being the same, but oftentimes university predictions are a little bit higher than the eventual outcome. But teacher estimates, the things now called centre assessment grades, will be available within schools. They weren't originally necessarily going to be shared with candidates. but the Information Commissioner has decided that candidates should be able to see them, and some schools have clearly shared them very openly with students and with families. But we are actually going to wait for verified and secure centre assessment grades to come down to us from UCAS in the next day or two, so that we can be sure we've had them for all candidates in the same way, in a secure way. And that seems to us the fairest approach, given the inequalities in the process that have already transpired.
So it's Tuesday afternoon at the moment. What you're saying is that us as a university still don't have those grades, the centre assessment grades from exam boards or from UCAS.
That's quite right, Karl. So we do hold in our system the original predicted grades, but those are not the same thing as the centre assessment grades. And the only other data we have in our system in relation to attainment are the moderated results that we now know are not going to be used in most cases. So we have to wait for those centre assessment grades to come to us from UCAS. And at the moment, we can't really issue individual level decisions to people because we actually don't know what the difference is between the centre assessment grade and the moderated result people have already received.
So I guess a question from here is, why are schools, colleges or individuals not able to provide these directly to the university?
Yes, and I do understand that many schools feel it would be much easier to just send those out to universities themselves. There are a number of reasons for our decision here. The first and foremost one is fairness. Schools and colleges are in all sorts of different situations and contexts. Some have got dedicated directors of guidance or university admissions. Some have got whole teams of staff looking after students in relation to their university placements. Others have serving teachers who are doing that role on top of all of their other classroom management and preparation. And we feel that the situation also with schools right now, in terms of who is in the office in a school at any given time, is potentially very different school to school, college to college. So on fairness grounds, we don't want to be in a position where one school is very quick to send us those centre assessment grades and another less quick, and people feel that we're confirming places more quickly just because of who's got in there first. So the main reason is fairness, but another key reason is security. Clearly, we have to be sure that the centre assessment grade we're now going to work off is the one that was submitted to the examination board. And so we feel the fairest and the most secure thing to do is to wait for those grades to be transmitted to us from the examination boards via UCAS.
Now, will we as the University of Exeter be honouring places if students have higher centre assessment grades?
So the position in terms of honouring places is relatively simple on the one hand, but also quite complicated underneath that. So I'll try and make this as clear as I possibly can. In this very difficult situation, and bearing in mind that we don't at this moment know as an institution how many more places we might be committing to because we haven't got the centre assessment grades, Exeter is delighted to be able to say that we will honour places for 2020 where candidates have met all of the conditions of their original offer, with the exception of those courses that have external caps, which principally means medicine in this instance. And the concern with medicine is that we are limited in the number of clinical placements that we can make available in any 1 year, because those arrangements don't just depend on classroom teaching and lab space at the university, they depend on our partners in the relevant NHS trusts. So we are unable at this precise moment to guarantee exactly what the policy will be for medicine and how many people we may be able to take for 2020 or how many we may have to guarantee for 2021. But aside from externally capped programs, so for most courses at the university, if a candidate has met exactly all of the conditions of their offer, including any subject conditions, we will honour the place for 2020. If we are in a position where the candidate perhaps has met requirements with only just a near miss of precise conditions, we may be able to honour that place depending on what subject they are applying for. So that will depend on whether there's still space on the course, or we may decide that we are going to honour that place for 2021. And the reasons there, Karl, are really about ensuring that we can continue to offer the same incredibly outstanding student experience at Exeter in a safe and secure environment, given the situation with COVID-19. And we don't want to be in a position where we have so many students on campus that we can't offer them the experience that they really richly deserve.
So I guess my follow-up question was going to be about why we're just unable to confirm all places to students who we originally had an offer from us. And I guess what you've alluded to there is the number of spaces and that quality of student experience on our campuses.
Indeed. I mean, we currently have, nearly 2,000 students who were unsuccessful in their application to Exeter over the last week. And we are not going to be able to find spaces for each and every one of those, because we really need to ensure that we have the right space in all of the right facilities and services, and that we can accommodate and house those students in Exeter. So this is going to be a situation where we have to do the very best we can, acknowledging that the situation is very, very difficult and stressful, for everybody. And if we can honour the place, we absolutely will. If we feel that that would place untenable strain on our teaching or our campus or our accommodation resources, or those of our partners, then we will offer that place for 2021.
Okay. Now, how do students confirm places with Exeter if they're holding places elsewhere?
So this is a situation, Karl, where I think we're going to need to do some further updates, and we are providing a frequently asked question page on our website where you can look at all of the detail in relation to each of these different scenarios. The reason we're not sure at the moment is that there are still discussions going on with UCAS. There's a discussion going on actually literally as we speak, in fact, where UCAS is thinking through the process that is going to be in play here. We have been asked not to contact candidates who are currently placed at another institution. So the reason we've not sent a message out to those people is because UCAS is keen for this to happen in a managed way, and it isn't keen for universities to be reaching out and speaking to students who already have a confirmed place at another university or higher education institution. So we're playing by the rules, and we are waiting for clarity on how that process will work. And we will provide further information about that on our website just as soon as we have it. Okay.
Are there any implications to students who may have accepted Exeter as an insurance choice?
Yes. We currently have some hundreds of students in that situation. And we really understand that some of those students will potentially find that they have other opportunities available to them at their original firm choice. And I really want to emphasise that students and families shouldn't be embarrassed about that situation as far as Exeter is concerned. Oftentimes, people are so lovely and kind, and they're worried about hurting our feelings and letting us down if they decide not to come to us, but to go to their original institution. I just want to assure everyone that we understand that you sometimes have your heart set on somewhere else, and that Exeter may not have been your first choice. And if you're fortunate to secure the place you've dreamed of somewhere else, follow your heart. I hope you've really seen from all of these sessions that we've done that, my first hope is that people are happy and comfortable where they go to uni. And I truly, honestly believe that it's important for you to feel settled and comfortable with your decision. And if you have the chance to follow your dream and your heart, then do it. Similarly, if your mind has changed and you feel really comfortable with Exeter now, even though it wasn't originally the place you had your heart set on, if we've converted you to the wonderful experience that we have to offer and the warmth of the West Country welcome that's waiting for you, then we will not be taking away any confirmed place that we have already offered, whether that's through an insurance chain of events or whether that you've secured that place through clearing. And that is an absolute commitment. We will not be withdrawing or rescinding any confirmed place that we have currently offered.
Okay. Now, what happens to students who may still wish to appeal their grades?
So we think now that the students who might be appealing grades will be much smaller in number than would have been the case had the original moderated grades stayed. And most of those we think potentially will be private candidates who potentially were homeschooled or a situation of that sort. We are also a little bit unclear as to what's going to happen next in relation to any autumn exam sittings. So we need to really wait and see what further information comes out about the appeal process going forward and about autumn opportunities to sit exams. So that's another area, I think, where we'll have to put some further information in our frequently asked questions as and when we have it. But, in principle, we will endeavour to hold to the dates we've already published for successful appeals. But I do have to emphasise that we're not certain at the moment how those timeframes, might change based on the new situation.
Okay. Now, one of the additional concerns for students who are waiting for the centre assessment grades to come through is living arrangements. Where they're going to live, is time running out for them? So what happens to accommodation arrangements for students whose places may be confirmed later this week or next?
Okay, so accommodation is always the next big thing after the academic admissions decision is reached and the place hopefully is secured. And we do understand that people get very anxious about where they're going to live. We are maintaining our accommodation guarantee for all of the eligible students who have applied by the end of July deadline. But in these circumstances, people who are coming to Exeter as a result of one of the changed admissions decisions in this week following the original results day may be offered accommodation that's different from the portfolio that was originally available. And that's because we're having to secure additional capacity and additional bed space to be able to cope with the higher numbers that we are anticipating. And I would honestly ask students and families, particularly parents, to reflect very carefully on how difficult and stressful this whole situation has been, not just for themselves, but also for all of the wonderful staff within the university community who have been working multiple weekends, night and day, to make these processes work. And I know that accommodation is a really stressful area and that we all want the best for the young people that are hopefully coming to Exeter in the autumn. But we all have to operate with a little bit of flexibility under these circumstances. We have gone on with the accommodation allocation process, and it will simply not be possible to manage getting everyone into a room and into a bed space in time if we have to reverse all of that activity now and start it again from scratch. So as of now, we would appeal to everybody to understand that that is a difficult thing to do, not really possible for us, and that we need some flexibility here for people to understand that they may be housed in a bed that isn't quite possibly where they'd originally imagined or hoped. It will still be wonderful. All the accommodation in Exeter is wonderful, and it's a wonderful small city that you can walk and cycle over. It's safe. You can move about, at all times really of the day and in the evenings with, real safety and security. And, even if it's not quite where you first imagined, your accommodation will be wonderful, and there will be lots of other wonderful new first years experiencing that with you.
And are we likely to see the same impact for students based in Penryn as well?
Students based in Penryn, I think, will be in a very fortunate position with accommodation, because we anticipate that some of the students, perhaps who we had offered places in Penryn, may now be joining the Streatham campus in Devon, and the pressure will be slightly off accommodation down in Cornwall. So that is something really well worth thinking about, that potentially it will be much easier to secure your choice of accommodation down in Cornwall than might perhaps be the case at the Devon campuses.
Okay, two very quick last questions, Katherine. The first is, how soon will students hear from us with regards to the centre assessment grades? Do we know?
We don't know at this precise moment, Karl, and normally, and in the previous episodes of this that we've done, I've been able to give dates for when students would hear following an admissions decision. But because we're not too sure at the moment exactly when we're going to get those centre assessment grades or how long it's going to take us to work through them, we can't say whether it will be towards the end of this week or into the early part of next week. I sincerely hope we're not keeping people waiting that much longer, because it's a desperately difficult situation for everyone. And I know how much you want to go and celebrate and enjoy looking forward to your next steps.
Okay, and the final question, is there anything that schools, colleges, teachers or students need to be doing right now?
I think the most important things for people who are working with Year 13 progression to higher education need to do now is stop thinking so much about sending us centre assessment grades. We're going to get those from UCAS, and really focus on helping those students think through what they really want in terms of their next step. Because some people will want to unpick a place they've already secured, and others may have decided now that they're very happy with how things have ended up and they don't want to unpick that. So having people in a very kind of objective and, slightly more distanced way than perhaps happens within families, helping people think through those decisions would be the most valuable thing. And of course, that will help speed things up from a university perspective as well, because if the applicant is sure about their request for the next step, we can help them with that really quickly. We can potentially get them released or deferred or whatever they need to do to move on as quickly as possible.
Okay, Katherine, thank you very much. And thank you for joining us. We'll be running further sessions, so please do follow us on our social media platforms for further updates on future sessions. Thank you.
Thanks, Karl.